The sun rose over the dusty streets of Dry Creek, painting everything in shades of gold and rust. The town had been built on cracked dirt and promises, where even hope needed boots to walk. Wagons creaked, chickens scurried across the main road, and boots clomped over wooden planks. The townsfolk moved like ghosts in their own routines, never looking twice at what didn't suit their day, and that's why no one noticed the girl. Her name was Eva. She wasn't much more than a wisp of a thing wrapped in a faded cotton dress with more tears than threads. Her boots had long since given up, the solace tied on with rope. Her hair, once probably a soft brown, now hung in uncombed knots. Her cheeks were hollowed from days without food, and her hands trembled from more than the chill in the morning air. She stood across from Jeb's bakery, eyes locked on a single loaf of bread displayed behind dusty glass. It was golden warm, its steam still curling up like a gentle whisper. It was the kind of loaf meant to be torn apart at dinner tables, not stolen. But Eva wasn't thinking of dinner tables. She was thinking of surviving the day. The growl in her stomach was louder than the horses down the street. She had tried everything, asking, begging, even offering to scrub floors, but folks turned away the moment they saw her. Too skinny to be useful, too dirty to be trusted, too desperate to be welcomed. She had slept in a barn last night, wrapped in a burlap sack. The mice had tried to nibble at her boots, but she'd scared them off with a stick and a whisper. When dawn crept in, her legs carried her back to the bakery like they had for the past 3 mornings. But today she couldn't walk away. She glanced left, then right. The street was momentarily clear, save for a dog chasing its tail by the blacksmith's post. Her heart pounded as she inched toward the window. Inside, Jeb was busy slapping dough, his back turned. One crack of the glass, one reach through, and she'd have the bread. Her fingers pressed to the wood pane. Her breath fogged the window. The hunger swelled up until her eyes watered not from shame, but need. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the sharp stone she'd kept since her mother's grave. The same one she used to cut apples when they still had orchards. She was about to lift it, just about to strike the glass, when she heard a shift behind her. Not footsteps. Something quieter, like air changing shape. She turned, startled, and there he stood. Tall, silent, still as an oak in the wind. A man with dark hair falling past his shoulders, braided loosely, with feathers tucked at the ends. His skin was bronze, weathered by sun and travel. His eyes, deep, unreadable pools, watched her without judgment. He wore buckskin pants, hand-stitched, and a worn shirt beneath a leather vest. His boots were soft and silent, like he walked with the earth instead of on it. A Comanche. And the town didn't like Comanches. Neither did the sheriff, or the store owners, or the church ladies. Eva froze. She expected him to grab her, scold her, maybe turn her in. Instead, he slowly, very slowly reached up and unfastened the leather strap of his jacket. The jacket looked warm, soft, like it had weathered storms and seen faraway lands. Without saying a word, he took a single step toward her, and before she could flinch or run, he placed it around her shoulders. It was heavy. It swallowed her whole. But it was warm. Warmer than anything she'd worn in weeks. She blinked up at him. Didn't smile. But his eyes softened just enough to feel like a kindness. Then, still without a word, he turned, walked into the bakery, and placed 3 silver coins on the counter. Jeb blinked at him, suspicious, but took the coins anyway. The Comanche man pointed at the bread in the window. Jeb hesitated, then grabbed the loaf and handed it over. The man turned, walked back outside, and held it out to Eva. She didn't move. At first, you don't have to steal, he said, voice deep like distant thunder. Little bird. The words landed like warmth on a frostbitten heart. Little bird. No one had called her anything with affection in a long Long time. She reached out with shaking hands and took the loaf. It was heavier than she thought. Or maybe her hands were just too light. He nodded once, then turned away. Walked down the street like he had come from nowhere and was returning to the same. The townsfolk were starting to stir. Some peeked from windows. A few gasped as they saw the jacket around her shoulders. One old woman muttered, "That's Dakota, the quiet one, the ghost in the trees." But Eva wasn't listening. She clutched the warm bread to her chest, jacket around her shoulders, and for the first time in weeks, her legs didn't feel like jelly beneath her. She had been a ghost herself. Until today. Now, for reasons she didn't understand, a stranger had reached into the fog of her life and pulled her back into the light, not with a sermon, not with a punishment, but with a jacket and a loaf of bread. And 4 quiet words. Eva didn't follow him at first. She stood there on the sidewalk, jacket draped over her too thin frame, clutching the loaf of bread like it might vanish into smoke. Around her, life in Dry Creek carried on, slow and uninterested. A stagecoach rumbled past, kicking up dust. A boy hollered from behind the saloon, chasing a mangy dog, but no one stopped. No one asked if she was all right. Except him. Tako. The name hung in her head now like a quiet riddle. Who was he? Why had he helped her? The jacket smelled faintly of cedar smoke and river wind. It was rough on the outside but soft against her skin. She hadn't known warmth like this in weeks, maybe longer. The bread in her arms made her feel heavier somehow. Realer, less like a ghost. She turned, slowly, watching him walk down the road. He didn't glance back. His gait was steady, silent, like his feet barely touched the earth. Something about that calm, that surety, stirred something in her curiosity. Maybe. Or perhaps it was gratitude. So she followed. At first, she kept a distance, like a shadow tethered to his trail. He didn't stop her, didn't speak, just walked. Through the back edge of town, past the livery stables, down toward the river bank. When he finally stopped, it was under a great cottonwood tree, its roots tangled in the dirt like ancient fingers. A narrow camp lay nearby, just a woven mat, a cooking stone, a water skin, and a saddlebag. Simple, efficient, quiet. He sat cross-legged by the fire pit and began to whittle a piece of wood. Eva stood several feet away, awkward and unsure. Should she speak? Say thank you? But something about his silence wrapped around the space like a blanket. Words felt too loud here. Too clumsy. So she didn't speak either. She sat. Not beside him, but close enough to feel the warmth of the fire when Ethan not Mendezelman. He lit it with flint and dry moss. The bread lay between them, and after a time he gestured toward it. She tore a piece and ate slowly, eyes watching him the whole time. He was carving a small figure, a bird, she thought. Maybe an eagle. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded. Didn't look up. She hesitated. Then, my name's Eva. Still. No response. He glanced up once and after a long pause said, I know. That surprised her. You do? He pointed at the saddlebag near the tree. A paper stuck out, a wanted notice for a missing orphan. Seen it in town. Thought they'd take you in. Eva shook her head. They didn't want me. Said I was too wild. Said I ran too much. Dakota gave a quiet grunt. Not agreement. Not sympathy. Just understanding. She wrapped his jacket tighter around her and looked up at the fading sky. You live here? She asked. He nodded once. By the river? He paused, then replied, The river don't ask questions. That made her smile a little. She liked the way he spoke. Like each word had to earn its place. I used to live on a farm, she said, before Mama got sick. Before the banker took it. Dakota didn't pry. Didn't press her. He let the words hang in the air until they faded like smoke. She watched him work. Watch the way his hands move steady, skilled. He seemed more at home with a knife and stick than most people did in church on Sunday. As the sun sank lower, the cold crept in. She tugged the jacket close again. "You don't have to let me stay," she said softly, unsure if it was a question or confession. "I didn't invite you," he said plainly. Her heart sank. "But I also didn't send you away." Eva stared into the fire. That was something. She wasn't sure what to make of it yet. As the stars blinked open above them, he handed her a second blanket from his pack. She took it slowly, surprised. "I won't take your mat," she said. "I sleep better on the ground," he answered. She laid the blanket down nearby, not too close, and curled up. The jacket still wrapped her like a promise. The fire crackled, and the sound of the river was steady in the background. Just as her eyes began to flutter closed, she heard his voice, soft and low. "You can stay. For now." Something in her chest unclenched. She didn't say thank you again. She just whispered, "Good night." There was no reply, but for the first time in weeks, sleep came quickly. The next morning, mist rose off the river, curling like ghosts above the water. Tako was already awake, kneeling by the shore, washing his face. Eva sat up slowly, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, jacket still close. He moved like a creature born of this land, quiet, measured, graceful. When he returned, he handed her a piece of smoked meat from his pack and motioned for her to drink from the waterskin. Over the next few days, they settled into a quiet rhythm. He never spoke much, but his gestures were kind. He showed her how to carve fishhooks, how to set a simple snare for rabbits. She watched him gather herbs, lay them out to dry, and braid leather cords for binding. At night, she'd sit beside the fire, wrapped in his jacket, and listen to the night sound she once feared, now made peaceful by his presence. He was a mystery, but not a frightening one. She learned little things. That he never prayed with words, only silence. That he sang quietly in Comanche when he thought she was asleep. That he carved animals into soft wood and left them by the tree's offerings. Maybe. She told him about her mother's songs, about her father's laugh before the droughts took him. She spoke slowly, not needing to rush. Somehow his silence made space for her story. One evening, after catching a fish with the trap he taught her to make, she said, "Why did you help me that day?" He paused in sharpening his knife. "You were hungry," he said simply, "but lots of people are." And no, one else helped. He met her eyes then. And for the first time, she saw something behind them. An ache, maybe. A memory. "I was hungry once," he said. "Someone gave me bread." That was all, but it was enough. That night, as the moon cast silver shadows over the grass, she leaned back on her blanket, stared at the stars, and whispered to the sky, "Glad I didn't steal that loaf." Somewhere nearby, Dakota stirred the fire, and in the quiet, she knew she wasn't a ghost anymore. Not to him, and maybe not to herself either. The days passed softly by the river. Eva counted them not in numbers, but in moments, fish caught, firewood gathered, nights where stars outnumbered her worries. With each sunrise, she felt a little less lost, and each time Dakota handed her something, be it a carved spoon, a flint stone, or a wordless nod, she felt a little more seen. But peace, she learned, was fragile. Like frost on a blade of grass, it glimmered just before the sun rose high enough to melt it away. It was a Saturday. When she ventured back to town, she hadn't told Dakota. He'd gone upstream to gather river herbs, and she thought she could make it quick. A loaf of bread, maybe some sewing needles, if she could trade the woven bracelet she'd made. She tugged his jacket close around her and walked the dusty path toward Dry Creek. The town looked smaller now. Or maybe she had just grown inside herself. People noticed her this time. Not as a ragged orphan, but as something unfamiliar, suspicious. Eyes narrowed. Murmurs followed her. Is that Dakota's jacket? She's with that redskin now? Bet she's sleeping under his fire. She ignored them, head high, heart steady. She was just there for bread, but the baker, who had once handed over a loaf in frightened compliance, now stared her down. No trades, he snapped. Not for you, not anymore. Ava's fingers tightened around the bracelet. Please, I made this. It's good work, look at the weave. He shoved it away. You think I want Comanche craft in my store? You want food? Tell your savage boyfriend to come pay himself. Heat flared in her cheeks. She wanted to scream, but what would it change? She turned away. Her feet moved quickly down the alley toward the back of the general store. And that's when she heard it. Voices, loud, angry. Dakota stole 3 heads of cattle from McBride's ranch. Told you, he's been watching from the tree line, waiting for his moment. Sheriff says he's rounding up a posse. Sundown. Eva ducked behind a barrel. Her pulse thundered in her ears. They were going to come for him. For Tko. She didn't wait. She didn't think. She just ran, back down the road, through the brush. Over the riverbank. She found him crouched near a tree, sorting herbs. He looked up as she skidded to a stop, breathless. They're coming, she gasped. The sheriff, McBride, the ranchers. They think you stole cattle. He blinked once, then stood slowly. His calm unnerved her more than any panic could have. I didn't, he said simply. I know you didn't. But they don't care. They're scared of you. And scared men look for excuses. Dakota turned to his pack. I'll leave before they reach the woods. No, don't run. That'll just make them sure it's true. He glanced at her, expression unreadable. What would you have me do? Let them tie me to a post and call it justice? Eva shook her head. There must be a way. Dakota's hands were already moving, packing flint, herbs, knife, water. The jacket was still around her shoulders. He stopped. Looked at her. You can leave now. This is not your fight. The words cut deeper than she expected. Don't say that. It's truth. She stepped forward. And where was truth when I starved in that alley? When the baker slammed his door in my face? When the church lady told me I was a cursed child? You saved me, Dakota. You didn't have to, but you did. So don't you dare tell me this isn't my fight. He stared at her for a long time. Then, very quietly said, You remind me of her. Her brows furrowed. Who? My wife. Ava's breath caught. He sat down slowly on a flat rock by the fire pit, staring into the woods. She was white. Like you. Her family didn't approve. Neither did mine. But she stayed. Even when the rains failed. Even when our child died before his first steps. He paused. One night, a man from her old town came to take her back. She refused, so he shot her. Silence swallowed the trees. I buried her under a sycamore tree. Since then, I've walked. Alone. Eva knelt beside him. Gently laid a hand on his. I'm not her. I know. But I'm still here. A long breath escaped him. The wind stirred through the trees. Then we fight, he said, not with guns. Not with war paint, but with strategy. He showed her how to lay traps across the trail trip wires from reeds. Noisemakers from stones. They smeared mud across the fire pit, erasing signs of a camp. Eva watched his every move, absorbing knowledge. Like water on parched ground. They worked until nightfall. The moon climbed high, pale and alert. That's when they heard it. Boots. Hoofbeats. Voices shouting in the distance. The posse had come. Eva gripped Dakota's arm. He placed a hand over hers. It was firm, unshaking. Stay close, he said. And they vanished into the trees. The first snowfall came before the sun had time to rise. It whispered down like a secret quiet, gentle but merciless all the same. Ava woke to white dust settled across the forest floor, branches draped in frost like bones and linen. Her breath puffed in clouds as she sat up, rubbing warmth into her hands. The world had turned silent overnight. As if holding its breath, Dakota was already awake, crouched near a fallen log, watching the path that led back toward Dry Creek. He blended into the woods like he'd been born of bark and snow. His face was calm, but his eyes were alert, scanning. Listening. Eva crept up beside him, jacket pulled tight around her. "They're still searching," she whispered. He nodded. "They'll move slower in the snow, but not stop. No." She knelt beside him, chewing the inside of her cheek. "You could run farther." "I'd rather not." "Why?" Dakota didn't answer right away. His fingers plucked at the feathers in his braid, smoothing them slowly. "I'm tired of running," he said. "It turns a man into something smaller than he is," Eva understood. She had spent most of her life running, not just from danger, but from the ache in her chest, from the cold of loneliness, from herself. "We stay," she said. His eyes flicked to her. She shrugged. "I'm not much use with a bow, but I can watch the trail." He didn't smile, but something soft passed over his face. Approval, maybe. They moved upstream, deeper into the forest, where the trees grew thicker and the snow sat heavier on the fana branches. Dakota picked a hollow beneath a large outcropping of rock, nature's shelter. A narrow cave, just deep enough to keep the wind out. They built a fire inside, carefully shielded with stacked stones so the smoke would curl upward through cracks. Ava gathered kindling with stiff fingers, the cold biting into her bones, but she didn't complain. Later that day, they heard the sound of hooves again, closer this time. Voices echoed faintly in the trees, men calling to each other, cursing. The cold, promising to bring that red devil to justice. One swore he'd skin Dakota for what he did to the cattle. Dakota stood silently, bow in hand, arrow notched but pointed to the ground. Eva clenched her fists. "Why do they keep saying you stole? You didn't." "Truth and fear don't often sit at the same fire," he said. She didn't know what hurt more, the injustice or how calm he was about it. That night, they didn't sleep. The snow fell heavier, blanketing their tracks. But it couldn't erase the signs of a hunted life. Dakota taught her how to listen for men who didn't know how to walk in woods, how to spot a snap in the wrong branch, how to silence breath. The next morning, the snow glistened like broken glass under the pale sun, and the posse found them. It happened fast. Dakota had just stepped out of the cave to check the ridge. Ava followed, too close behind, when a shout rang out. "There! I see him!" Gunshots echoed through the trees. Dakota grabbed Eva and pushed her back toward the rocks, just as a bullet whizzed past his ear. He ducked behind a tree, bow in hand, eyes scanning the woods. "Stay low," he barked. Eva crawled into the cave's mouth, heart pounding like a war drum. Dakota moved fast, silent, calculated. He loosed an arrow into the brush, forcing the attackers to scatter. Another shot rang out. It struck a tree near his side. Splintering bark. Eva watched as he drew another arrow, but too late. A rifle cracked. Toko jerked back. He fell hard, clutching his side. "No." Eva screamed. She ran to him without thinking. He tried to wave her off, but she dropped to her knees beside him, eyes wide at the blood seeping through his shirt. "You're hit," she whispered. Panicked, he gritted his teeth, face pale. "Through the side, clean, I think." She tore part of her underskirt and pressed it to the wound. Dakota didn't cry out. His hand gripped her arm, steadying himself. "We have to move," he murmured. "You can't walk. I'll crawl if I have to." Bullets cracked again. She could hear the men drawing closer. Eva helped him to his feet. His arm wrapped over her shoulder. Together, They stumbled deeper into the woods. She didn't feel the snow on her boots or the tears freezing on her cheeks. All she saw was his blood dripping onto the white earth. They moved like shadows through the brush, finally collapsing behind a rock ledge. She forced him down gently, breathing hard. "Let me see," she said. "I need to stop the bleeding." She opened his shirt. The wound was raw, angry, but not deadly yet. The bullet had torn flesh but passed through. She reached for his pouch and found the herbs he'd gathered. "I don't know what half of these do," she said. He managed a hoarse whisper. "Bitter root, ground pine, clean first." Her hands worked quickly, guided by memory. He'd taught her more than she realized. She ground the herbs, mixed them with snow, pressed them into the wound. He hissed, but didn't flinch. When she was done, she wrapped the jacket around his chest. He looked at her, eyes glassy. "You learned well." She bit her lip. "You taught well." That night, she didn't sleep. She kept the fire low, eyes on the path, ears tuned to every branch that cracked. Dakota slept fitfully, murmuring in Comanche. Words she didn't understand, but she held. His hand anyway, grounding him. At one point, he opened his eyes and said, "You should have left me." Ava shook her head. "You didn't leave me. You owe me nothing. Maybe not. But I give it anyway." He stared at her for a long time. Then, softly, "You're not her, but you carry the same fire." Eva nodded, blinking back tears. "Then let me burn with you." The fire popped out, the snow fell, and somewhere in the woods the posse turned back defeated. By the cold, the silence, and the tracks that vanished in the snow. For now, they were safe. And for the first time in her life, Eva felt stronger than fear. The snow began to melt as winter loosened its grip. Tiny rivulets trickled down from the high rocks, weaving through the forest like veins of a waking beast. Trees wore a sheen of frost in the mornings, but by noon, sunlight broke through and golden. Patches. In a clearing not far from the river, Ava sat on her knees, grinding acorns into meal on a flat stone. Beside her, Dakota rested, his side wrapped tight in linen soaked with crushed pine and yarrow. He was healing slowly, painfully, but healing. Each morning, she helped him sit up. Each afternoon, he taught her something new: how to read the stars, how to braid sinew into thread, how to listen to the earth the way others listen to words. They no longer needed to speak much. Their days moved in rhythm, two lives orbiting one another in silence, comfort and trust. But peace never lasted long in the Borderlands. One afternoon, as Eva collected firewood near the riverbank, she saw them. A group of riders. 5.0-6. They weren't from Dry Creek. Their horses bore bright beaded saddles, their hair braided and banded with leather. One of the men wore a necklace of carved bone, his face painted with earth-toned lines. Eva dropped to her knees behind a thicket, heart hammering. Comanche. But not Dakota. She ran back to the cave, breathless, whispering his name. He sat up, eyes sharp. "They found us," she said. He moved slower than before, but the fire in his eyes burned no dimmer. He walked out, shoulders square despite the pain. They didn't wait long. The group entered the clearing silent, grim and still as stone. The leader dismounted first. He was older, eyes deep with history, skin creased by time. Takeo stepped forward. "Chief Elk Runner," he said in Comanche. The old man nodded. "Silent Hawk." Ava blinked. She'd never heard Dakota called that before. The others murmured among themselves. One looked at Eva with a sneer. "A white girl?" The younger warrior said, "You share your fire with our enemy?" Dakota didn't flinch. "She is no enemy." The younger man, tall, scarred, his eyes like coals, stepped forward. "You?" "Disappeared from the plains. We thought you dead. I chose the river, not the grave. You chose the girl." Takota's hand hovered near his knife. Eva stayed quiet. This wasn't her fight to speak into, not yet. The chief raised a hand, silencing the tension. "We come to bring you home, Silent Hawk," he said. "The tribe needs men of wisdom, warriors of silence and strength." Takota looked at Eva, then back at Elk Runner. "Then make room for her." Gasps rippled through the warriors. The young one stormed tail. They called him, spat on the ground. "She doesn't belong. Her people kill ours, drive us from the land." "She has no people," Takota said. "They threw her out." "Like they tried to do to me." Stormtail stepped forward. "She is not your blood. She is my kin by choice." Ava's throat tightened. No one had ever claimed her like that. Still, the tension grew. Elk Runner studied them both. "She will not be safe with us," he warned. "Some will try to chase her away. Then we will not stay." Takota's voice was final, calm, like stone and river. Stormtail sneered. "You would turn your back on your own kind? For a starving white girl?" "She was starving because of your kind," Eva said suddenly, standing. Her voice shook, but she held her ground. "But he fed me. You call yourselves a tribe. He was my tribe before I even knew his name." Silence. Only the wind through the pine. Then Elk Runner let out a slow breath. "You have changed, Silent Hawk. So has the world." The chief looked toward the river. "There is a place beyond the hills, hidden, quiet, no claim of white man or red. If you go there, no one will follow." Takota nodded. "We will." Elk Runner held out his hand. Takota grasped it. Stormtail turned away, disgusted. The chief looked at Eva, and for the first time his gaze softened. "Take care of him," he said in broken English. "He walks between storms." She nodded. And with that, the tribe rode off. Dust rose behind their hooves. Eva turned to Takota. He sat on a fallen log, breathing hard from the strain. "You'd really leave them?" she asked. "I already did." She sat beside him. "What now?" He looked up toward the hills, where the trees grew tall and wild and untouched. "Now we find a place where no name matters. No blood, no color. Just breath and earth and sky." She smiled. "A tribe of two?" He nodded. "And a garden, maybe," she said. "And a fire that never goes out." They spent the next days preparing. She gathered seed pods. He wove new moccasins for her feet. They packed light, what they needed and nothing more. A carved spoon, a flint stone, a half-finished wooden bird, and the jacket. Always the jacket. When they finally left, the forest watched them go, not as intruders, but as part of itself. They walked side by side, their shadows long across the melting snow. No more dry creek, no more running. They had chosen each other, not by birth, but by fire. By kindness. By survival. And together they would build a home. Not made of wood or stone, but of something stronger. Trust. The wind shifted with spring. It no longer howled like a beast at the door, but whispered through the trees like a song. The snows were gone now, rivers ran full, and birds returned to the sky like memories on wings. Eva and Takota had traveled far. Over ridges, through valleys, across a narrow canyon, where wild goats watched from the ledges and sun warmed the flat rocks beneath their boots. For days they walked out. Sometimes they spoke. Other times silence was enough. They stopped only once they reached a place no map ever named, a hollow cradled by mountains, hidden by thickets and guarded by the old bones of the world. There was a stream there, clean and cold. Deer tracks marked the banks. Blackberry bush tangled along the east edge. A place that welcomed them without asking questions. They made it their home. The first nights they slept beneath the stars. By the third moon they built a lean-to. By the sixth, a cabin of pine logs and packed clay. No one taught them except the forest and the wind, and the rhythm of one another's hands. They didn't speak of what came before, not often. But it lived with them, in the way Eva folded his blanket before the fire, gently as if tending to a wound that never fully healed, and the way Dakota always left a piece of bread on the windowsill for the crows. He said, but she knew it was more than that. One night she asked, "Why do you call yourself Silent Hawk?" He stirred the fire. For a while only the crackle answered. "My father named me that when I was young," he said at last. "I never cried as a baby, just watched, always watching." "You still do," she said with a soft smile. He nodded. "And you still reach for things before asking." She looked at her hands. "I used to steal," she whispered. He looked up. "You reached for survival. That is not the same." A long silence. Then he added, "That day at the bakery, what would you have done if I hadn't stopped you?" She didn't answer right away. "I don't know," she said, "but I think I would have run, like I always did." "But you stayed," he said. "Because of you." He didn't speak, but he reached into a worn leather pouch. From it, he pulled something wrapped in cloth. He placed it in her lap. She opened it slowly. A small loaf of bread, golden, warm, still steaming. Her hands trembled. "You baked this?" He nodded. She stared at it like it was a jewel. "I used to dream of a piece like this," she said. "When I was cold, when my ribs showed, when the baker shouted and I ran." He moved closer. "This is yours," he said. "Every day from now on, not stolen, not begged for yours." Tears brimmed in her eyes. She broke the loaf in two and handed half to him, and they ate it together in silence, the fire crackling between them. Later that week, they found a field beyond the trees. They planted corn and beans, built a fence to keep out deer, hung wind chimes from branches, bones, shells, little metal rings. The air sang when the breeze passed through. One morning, Eva returned from the stream with a basket of wild herbs. She found Dakota outside, carving something. "What is it?" she asked. He turned it over in his hands and handed it to her. Small wooden figurine. Of a girl, head bowed. Arms outstretched, clutching a loaf. Her throat tightened. "You carved me?" He nodded. She hugged it to her chest. That night rain fell. Not cold, angry rain, but soft, drumming rain. They sat by the window. She wrapped herself in his old jacket, the one he gave her that first day. It was patched now, faded at the edges, but it still smelled like warmth, like safety, like him. "You never told me what you were going to say," she said suddenly. He raised an eyebrow. "That day, when I was holding the bread, you put your jacket around me. You said something. I couldn't hear it. I ran before you finished." He looked at her, the shadows dancing across his cheekbones. "I said," he whispered, "if you're hungry, come with me." She smiled. "I did, and you stayed." The next day, they walked to the edge of the hollow. Wildflowers bloomed yellow, red, and violet. He took her hand. "Do you miss the towns?" she asked. He shook his head. "They never had a place for me." "They never had one for me either," she said. Now they had one. Here. They called it Hollow Ridge. No one else knew its name. No one else ever came. But every spring they baked the same loaf, shared it by the window, and left a piece on the sill for the girl who once had nothing, and the quiet man who gave her everything. Years passed. The house grew older, but their fire never died. It burned in bread, in laughter. And the hum of wind chimes. And in a jacket still hanging by the door.